First Contact and Deception. The holographic display in the United Earth Defense Command Center pulsed with activity as Admiral Sarah Chen studied the approaching vessels. 12 ships, each larger than anything humanity had ever built, decelerated toward Earth's orbit with practiced precision. Their design was elegant, all sweeping curves and crystalline structures that seemed to catch and amplify starlight. Incoming transmission. Admiral, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced, his fingers dancing across the neural interface. They're identifying themselves as the Galactic Confederation Diplomatic Fleet. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The ships were indeed beautiful, but her trained eye caught the subtle details others might miss. The reinforced hull sections carefully disguised as decorative elements, the way their formation could quickly shift to offensive positions, and most tellingly, the faint energy signatures that suggested weapon systems far more powerful than any diplomatic vessel should carry. Put them through, Lieutenant, and make sure our passive scanners keep recording everything. The holographic display shifted, revealing a tall, humanoid figure with iridescent skin and elaborate robes that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Greetings, people of Earth. I am High Ambassador Xerxes of the Galactic Confederation. We come in peace, seeking to welcome humanity into our grand alliance of civilizations. Sarah maintained a perfect diplomatic smile, one that revealed nothing of the rapid analysis happening behind her eyes. Ambassador Xerxes, we are honored by your presence. I am Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Command. We've long hoped to make contact with other civilizations. As the formal greetings continued, Sarah's neural implant quietly processed the data streaming in from Earth's quantum sensor network. The Confederation ships were broadcasting on frequencies they thought humanity couldn't detect, coordinating with a much larger fleet hiding behind Jupiter's magnetic field. Their encryptions were sophisticated, but nothing that Earth's quantum AI couldn't crack in real time. We would be delighted to host your diplomatic delegation, Sarah offered, her voice warm and welcoming. Though I must admit, your ships are fascinating. Our sensors detect some unusual energy signatures we'd love to learn more about. A flicker of concern crossed Xerxes' features, so quick that only someone watching for it would notice. Merely standard diplomatic protection measures, I assure you. The cosmos can be unpredictable. Of course, Sarah agreed pleasantly. We understand completely. In fact, we'd be happy to demonstrate some of our own protective measures. Lieutenant Rodriguez, please activate the Aegis network. Safety protocols only, of course. Around Earth, thousands of seemingly innocent satellites simultaneously activated new energy signatures. Nothing threatening, but enough to make the Confederation ship's sensors light up with confusion as they failed to categorize the technology they were detecting. Fascinating technology, Xerxes commented, trying to hide his unease. Your civilization is more advanced than our initial survey suggested. Oh, we're full of surprises, Sarah replied cheerfully. Humanity has a remarkable capacity for innovation. We'd love to share some of our achievements with your delegation. Over the next several hours, Sarah led the diplomatic dance with practiced ease. Her team presented carefully curated tours of Earth's most advanced facilities, all elaborate deceptions created by quantum holography. Meanwhile, humanity's real technological marvels remained hidden, watching and waiting. The Confederation delegation grew increasingly agitated as their scans failed to reconcile what they were seeing with their preconceptions of Earth's capabilities. Their hidden communications with the fleet behind Jupiter became more frequent, more urgent. In her private office, Sarah met with the Earth Defense Council via secure quantum link. They're planning to attack within the next 48 hours, she reported. Their hidden fleet includes over 200 warships, and they're positioning themselves for a multi-vector assault. Should we reveal our capabilities now? Asked General Martinez. Show them why this would be a mistake. Sarah shook her head. Not yet. Let them commit to their course of action. Sometimes the best lesson requires experiencing the consequences of one's choices. She smiled, but there was steel behind it. Besides, I'm curious to see their faces when they realize just how badly they've miscalculated. The quantum defense grid is fully operational, Dr. Wong, Chief of Advanced Weapons Research, reported, and the new probability drives are ready for deployment. Though I still say they're going to think it's magic. Any sufficiently advanced technology, Doctor, Sarah reminded her with a grin. Let them think what they want. Our job is to make sure they live to learn from the experience. As the meeting concluded, Sarah returned to the diplomatic reception, where Ambassador Xerxes was growing visibly frustrated with his inability to reconcile Earth's contradictory technological signatures. She watched him attempt to maintain his composure while his scanners told him impossible things about the drink dispenser in the corner, which was, in fact, a quantum-locked piece of technology far beyond anything the Confederation had achieved. "Is everything all right, Ambassador?" she asked innocently. "You seem troubled." "Not at all, Admiral," he replied smoothly. "Simply processing all the wonders your world has to offer." "Oh, Ambassador," Sarah said with genuine warmth, "you haven't seen anything yet." In the space behind Jupiter, the hidden Confederation fleet continued its preparation for what they thought would be a swift conquest of a primitive world. They had no way of knowing that every move they made was being watched, analyzed, and prepared for by systems they couldn't even detect. Their encrypted communications were an open book to Earth's quantum AI, their stealth technology about as effective as hiding behind a clear glass wall. Sarah Chen had learned long ago that sometimes the best defense was letting your opponent believe they had the upper hand. As she chatted amiably with Xerxes about cultural exchange programs that would never happen, she felt almost sorry for what was coming. Almost. The next day dawned bright and clear, and Sarah knew it would be the last peaceful sunrise before the Confederation made their move. She had already given the order to evacuate all civilian populations to the quantum shelters, a precaution that the Confederation interpreted as routine civil defense drills, further cementing their belief in humanity's technological inferiority. "Have the ambassador's ships made any new moves?" she asked during the morning briefing. "No changes in their diplomatic fleet's position," Rodriguez reported, "but the hidden fleet is beginning final attack preparations. They'll be ready to strike within 6 hours." Sarah nodded, feeling a calm certainty settle over her. Humanity had faced its share of challenges over the centuries, survival against the harsh realities of space chief among them. Those struggles had forged them into something far more formidable than the Confederation could imagine. But they would learn. Oh yes, they would learn. The mask falls. The attack began precisely as Earth's quantum predictive systems had calculated. The Confederation's hidden fleet burst from behind Jupiter in a dazzling display of what they considered advanced propulsion technology, their ships forming attack patterns they had perfected over centuries of conquest. From her command center, Admiral Chen watched with clinical interest as over 200 warships dropped their diplomatic pretenses and revealed their true nature. Ambassador Xerxes' hologram appeared on her display, his diplomatic poise replaced by cold superiority. "Admiral Chen, your world will now join the Confederation. By force, since you rejected our peaceful overtures." His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Surrender now, and we will be merciful." Sarah raised an eyebrow, taking a sip from her coffee. "Peaceful overtures? Is that what you call hiding a war fleet behind Jupiter?" She checked her tactical display. "Also, I don't believe you've met our defense fleet yet. Perhaps we should fix that." At her signal, space itself seemed to ripple. Where there had been empty void, suddenly there were ships, human ships. They didn't emerge from cloaking devices or jump from hyperspace. They had been there all along, existing in a quantum state that the Confederation's sensors simply couldn't comprehend. "Impossible," Xerxes breathed, his iridescent skin paling. "Our scans showed no vessels of this size or capability." "Did they?" Sarah smiled. "Or did they show exactly what we wanted them to show?" She set down her coffee cup. "You see, Ambassador, Humanity learned long ago that the best way to survive in this universe was to never show all our cards at once. Your sensors didn't fail. They just don't know how to look for ships that operate on quantum probability principles. The Confederation fleet opened fire, their energy weapons creating a spectacular light show as they launched their first strike. The human ships didn't dodge. They didn't have to. The beams of energy simply passed through them, as if they weren't quite there. "Fascinating weapons you have there," Sarah commented, as if discussing the weather, "though you might want to update them. They're still operating on the assumption that matter and energy are separate things." Xerxes' face contorted with rage. "Our weapons are the most advanced in the known galaxy. You cannot possibly. Cannot possibly what? Understand them. Defend against them. Ambassador, we decoded your weapon systems the moment you entered our solar system. Right now, our quantum AI is running simulations of your entire technological history just from analyzing your ship designs." Sarah leaned forward. "Would you like to know where you went wrong with your particle beam configuration? There's a rather obvious efficiency improvement you seems to have missed around 3 centuries ago." The Confederation fleet adjusted tactics, launching what they considered their unstoppable second-wave assault. Thousands of autonomous combat drones swarmed toward Earth, each armed with enough firepower to level a city. They made it exactly halfway before stopping dead in space. "Oh yes, your drone fleet," Sarah noted. "Quite impressive. We've actually already uploaded new operating systems to all of them. Don't worry, we kept their core functionality. We just made some improvements." As if to demonstrate, the entire drone swarm turned around and formed a massive holographic display in space, showing a real-time analysis of everything the Confederation fleet was doing wrong from a tactical perspective, complete with helpful annotations. "This is impossible," Xerxes sputtered. "No civilization at your level of development could possibly." "Our level of development," Sarah interrupted, genuine amusement in her voice. "Ambassador, did you ever stop to consider that perhaps you were measuring us by the wrong metrics? You saw our cities, our visible infrastructure, and assumed you understood our capabilities. Tell me, did you ever wonder why a species that supposedly hadn't mastered advanced spaceflight had no pollution, no resource depletion, no visible power generation systems?" The Confederation fleet's commanders were now reporting multiple system failures across their ships. Systems weren't so much failing as simply deciding to work differently. Their quantum-encrypted communications were being responded to before they even sent them. Their most advanced sensors were telling them that the human ships both did and didn't exist simultaneously. "What? What are you?" Xerxes demanded. "We're human," Sarah replied simply. "We spent centuries solving problems you never even considered problems. While you were perfecting bigger guns, we were learning to manipulate the fabric of reality itself. While you were building larger ships, we were learning to exist in multiple states simultaneously." She gestured to her fleet. "These ships, they're not vehicles in any way you understand. They're manifestations of mathematical principles you haven't discovered yet." To demonstrate her point, one of the human vessels simply ceased to exist, then reappeared inside a Confederation ship, without damaging either vessel. It passed through the Confederation ship like a ghost, leaving behind detailed engineering suggestions written in holographic form on every wall. The Confederation fleet's formation began to break. Some ships attempted to retreat, only to find that space itself seemed to curve around them, bringing them right back where they started. Others tried to power up their most destructive weapons, only to find them transformed into elaborate art installations. "Stop this," Xerxes demanded. "This is not how warfare is conducted." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "You're right. This isn't warfare. This is education. Right now, your entire fleet is being preserved in a quantum probability bubble where time is flowing differently. From your perspective, this battle has lasted minutes. In the bubble, your crews have experienced several weeks of intensive scientific and cultural exchange, with holographic human representatives. She checked her display. I believe they're just finishing the section on why attempting to conquer other civilizations is a sign of cultural stagnation. The quantum psychology simulations suggest they're taking it rather well. The Confederation's mighty fleet hung in space, each ship now surrounded by a gentle golden glow as their crews experienced an accelerated first contact done right. The contact that should have happened if the Confederation hadn't chosen deception and violence. Now then, Ambassador, Sarah said, producing a quantum tablet that somehow managed to appear simultaneously ancient and impossibly advanced. Shall we discuss actual diplomatic relations? I believe your crew will have some fascinating new perspectives to share once we release them from the temporal education bubble. Tables turned. The quantum education bubbles dissolved with a subtle shimmer, leaving the Confederation fleet intact but fundamentally changed. Admiral Chen watched with satisfaction as confused but enlightened crews tried to process their weeks of accelerated learning that had taken place in mere minutes of real time. Welcome back, she broadcast to the fleet. I trust the educational experience was illuminating. The responses came in a cascade of bewildered acknowledgments. Ship captains and crew members who had arrived ready for conquest were now buzzing with questions about quantum mechanics, cultural exchange protocols, and whether they could get copies of the advanced physics texts they'd studied in their accelerated time. Ambassador Xerxes had remained surprisingly quiet during this transition, his iridescent skin cycling through various hues as he processed the situation. Finally, he spoke. Admiral Chen, this is unprecedented. Oh, I don't know about that, Sarah replied, materializing a cup of tea from what appeared to be thin air. We have records of at least 3 other civilizations who tried similar conquest attempts. Would you like to meet them? They're some of our closest allies now. Before Xerxes could respond, one of his fleet commanders broke into the channel. Hi, Ambassador, you must see this. The humans. They've completely rewritten our understanding of subspace mathematics. Captain Vexel's science team is saying their entire doctoral thesis was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of dimensional physics. Sarah tried not to smile too broadly. Ah yes, the temporal education program included some basic corrections to your scientific foundation. We thought it might help avoid future misunderstandings. Basic corrections. Another Confederation scientist cut in, their voice filled with academic excitement rather than military discipline. Admiral, your basic corrections just rendered our entire theoretical framework obsolete. Do you realize what this means for our understanding of reality itself? Indeed, Sarah nodded. Though I should mention that what you experienced was just the introductory course. Our kindergartners usually start with these concepts before moving on to the more complex aspects of quantum reality manipulation. The communication channels erupted with excited scientific discourse as Confederation researchers began comparing notes across ships. Military protocols were forgotten as decades of accepted scientific doctrine were cheerfully dismantled by their own newly enlightened experts. A young Confederation ensign, apparently forgetting this was supposed to be a hostile encounter, eagerly asked, Admiral, is it true that your ships don't actually move through space, but rather rearrange probability to exist at their destination? That's a bit of an oversimplification, Sarah replied, warming to the teaching moment. It's more accurate to say we've learned to treat space-time as a suggestion rather than a rule. Would you like a demonstration? Without waiting for a response, she caused her command center to briefly exist at multiple points throughout the Confederation fleet simultaneously. In each location, she continued her explanation as if this was the most natural thing in the world, her multiple instances carrying on separate but related conversations about advanced physics with different groups of now enthusiastic students. Xerxes watched as his mighty invasion fleet transformed into something resembling an impromptu scientific conference. This is not how first contact scenarios are supposed to proceed, he muttered. Oh, all instances of Sarah raised an eyebrow simultaneously, And how many first contacts have you participated in where one side didn't immediately try to establish dominance through military might? The question hung in space as Confederation crews began sharing their newly acquired insights about peaceful interaction and cultural exchange. Several ships had already begun rewriting their first contact protocols, enthusiastically incorporating their recent lessons about quantum diplomacy and multi-dimensional cultural understanding. But our weapons? Xerxes gestured helplessly at his fleet's now transformed armaments. What did you do to them? Do you mean the probability cannons that were masquerading as art installations? Sarah asked innocently. We simply helped them achieve their full potential. They're much more useful now as quantum communication arrays. Your crews should be able to contact home with them. Though I should warn you that faster-than-light communication tends to be a bit shocking the first time you experience it outside of linear time. As if on cue, several Confederation ships successfully activated their transformed weapons systems, establishing instant communication links across the galaxy. The resulting conversations with their homeworld were predictably chaotic, as they tried to explain how their invasion fleet had been transformed into an enthusiastic learning community in what their superiors perceived as mere moments. Admiral, one of the Confederation science officers called out, we're detecting some unusual readings from Earth's direction. It appears your planet is, well, it seems to be existing in several quantum states simultaneously. Oh, that's just rush hour, Sarah explained casually. Some of our citizens prefer to exist in multiple probability states during their commute. It helps with traffic congestion. The communication channels filled with excited murmuring as Confederation scientists frantically recorded readings they barely understood. Several requested permission to begin immediate research exchanges, apparently having completely forgotten they had arrived as invaders. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she watched the scene unfold. The Confederation fleet, still arranged in its attack formation, now resembled nothing so much as a group of eager students discovering whole new fields of study. Ships that had arrived bristling with weapons were now bristling with scientific instruments, their crews more interested in measuring quantum fluctuations than maintaining military discipline. Well, Ambassador, she addressed Xerxes, who was still trying to maintain some semblance of his original diplomatic gravity. Shall we discuss those cultural exchange programs now? I believe your people have some fascinating insights to share about the nature of reality and the futility of conquest-based diplomacy. Pride and Prejudice. The Confederation High Council's emergency session was perhaps the most chaotic in its 10,000-year history. The quantum communication feeds from their fleet, transmitted through weapons systems that supposedly couldn't do that, showed scenes that defied their understanding of reality. Preposterous, High Counselor Vex thundered, his crystalline form vibrating with agitation. You mean to tell me that this primitive species not only defeated our fleet but did so by teaching them? Ambassador Xerxes, his image projected simultaneously across all council chambers through Earth's quantum network, nodded wearily. Counselors, I suggest you review the educational materials they've provided. Our understanding of the universe is incomplete. In Earth orbit, Admiral Chen watched the council session with patient amusement. She had been invited to observe but chose to let the Confederation process their paradigm shift without her direct intervention. Instead, she focused on the remarkable transformation taking place among the fleet. Confederation ships that had arrived as warships were rapidly evolving into something else entirely. Crews had begun experimenting with their newly acquired knowledge, making tentative attempts at quantum engineering that would have been unthinkable hours ago. Some vessels had started exhibiting strange properties as their engineers eagerly applied their lessons. Admiral, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, trying to suppress a grin, the Confederation battlecruiser Inevitable Victory has accidentally quantum entangled itself with its own engine room. Their chief engineer is quite excited about it. Send them the beginner's guide to quantum ship architecture, Sarah replied, and maybe a warning about not trying to exist in too many states at once without proper training. The High Council's debate grew more heated as reports continued to stream in. Another counselor, their energy form flickering with distress, demanded, "But what about our military superiority? Our technological dominance?" The response came not from Xerxes, but from Captain Ixol, whose science vessel had perhaps undergone the most dramatic transformation. The ship now existed in a permanent state of quantum flux, its crew happily conducting experiments that would have seemed like magic mere hours ago. "Counselors," Ixol's voice carried the excitement of discovery rather than the shame of defeat. "We were never superior. We were children playing with toys we didn't understand, convinced that bigger weapons meant greater advancement. The humans." They paused, searching for words. The humans transcended that kind of thinking centuries ago. To demonstrate, Ixol's ship briefly manifested in the council chamber, not as a hologram, but as an actual quantum projection of the vessel, shrunk down to room size. The counselors recoiled as their sensors tried to process a ship that simultaneously existed in orbit around Earth and in their chamber, operating under physical laws they had never imagined possible. "This is unacceptable," High Counselor Vex declared. "Our entire civilization is built on the principle of military and technological supremacy. If word of this spreads—" "It already has," Sarah's voice cut in smoothly as she finally joined the conversation. Her image appeared in the council chamber, seated comfortably in what appeared to be a chair made of solid mathematics. "Your fleet's quantum communications have reached every corner of your empire. As we speak, scientists and scholars throughout your civilization are beginning to question, to wonder, to imagine new possibilities." The council chamber erupted in overlapping arguments and demands, but Sarah continued calmly. "Look at your fleet now. Really look at them." The counselors turned their attention to the feeds from their ships. What they saw was barely recognizable as their once mighty armada. Ships rippled with quantum effects as crews experimented with their new understanding. Weapon systems had been repurposed into research tools. Military discipline had given way to scientific curiosity. "Your civilization stands at a crossroads," Sarah explained, her voice gentle but firm. "You can cling to your old paradigms of dominance and control, or you can embrace this opportunity to truly advance. Your people have already chosen. The only question is whether their leaders will join them in this evolution." As if to emphasize her point, another Confederation ship successfully achieved quantum state manipulation, its hull briefly becoming transparent as its crew cheered their achievement. The ship's captain, once a hardened military commander, could be heard excitedly explaining probability wave functions to anyone who would listen. "But our authority," one counselor began weakly, "will be based on wisdom rather than fear." Sarah completed the thought. "Imagine leading a civilization focused on understanding the universe rather than conquering it. Your people are already imagining it. They're already building it." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Outside, the transformed fleet had begun arranging itself into new patterns, not military formations, but geometric configurations that enhanced their quantum research capabilities. Ships that had arrived as conquerors were now working together in ways their designers had never intended, their crews linked in a shared pursuit of knowledge that transcended their former military purpose. "I believe," Ambassador Xerxes said into the silence, "it is time we reconsidered our position in the galaxy. Not as conquerors, but as students, and perhaps one day as teachers ourselves." The quantum feeds showed similar discussions happening across the Confederation Empire. The transformation that had begun in Earth's orbit was spreading, carried by the very communication systems that humanity had helped them unlock. The age of conquest was ending, not with a battle, but with an awakening. Sarah watched it all unfold with satisfaction. Humanity had faced the Confederation not with weapons, but with understanding. Not with destruction, but with education. And in doing so, they had achieved something far more significant than a military victory. They had catalyzed the evolution of an entire civilization. Lessons learned. 6 months after what historians would later call the Quantum Awakening, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in a very different kind of command center. The space around Earth had transformed into what some were calling the greatest learning exchange in known history. where once the Confederation fleet had arranged itself for battle, now a vast network of ships and stations formed an intricate quantum-linked web of shared knowledge and discovery. Admiral Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, now sporting subtle quantum augments that let him process information in multiple probability states. The latest batch of Confederation exchange students has arrived. They're rather eager to begin. Sarah smiled as she watched the new arrivals' ships take their positions in the learning array. The vessels, once warships, had been extensively modified by their crews into specialized research platforms. Some existed partially in other dimensions, their hulls gleaming with mathematical equations made manifest. "Let them dock at the Quantum Synchronization Hub," she instructed. "And make sure they understand the safety protocols this time. We don't want another incident like last week when that enthusiastic group tried to skip straight to seventh-dimensional physics." The incident in question had resulted in 3 ships temporarily existing as pure mathematical concepts before their crews could be rescued. The Confederation scientists had been thoroughly embarrassed, but also absolutely fascinated by the experience. Ambassador Xerxes materialized in the command center, his formerly rigid diplomatic manner replaced by the casual confidence of someone who had found a new purpose. "Admiral Chen, the High Council's Transformation Committee has submitted their final report. Would you believe they're actually proposing to rename our civilization? The Confederation apparently sounds too militaristic." "Oh," Sarah raised an eyebrow. "And what are they considering instead?" "The unity of learning civilizations," Xerxes replied with a small laugh. "Though some are pushing for the quantum collective, there's quite a debate about it. Around Earth, the scene would have been unrecognizable to anyone who had witnessed the attempted invasion. Former warships now housed vast libraries of quantum data, their weapon ports repurposed into probability sensors. Crews that had arrived ready for conquest now eagerly shared discoveries across species and civilizations, their military ranks replaced by academic titles they were still learning to pronounce correctly. "Admiral," an excited voice cut in. Captain Ixel, whose ship had become something of a legend after achieving stable 11-dimensional existence for a full 3 minutes. "You must see this. My crew has just managed to quantify the relationship between consciousness and quantum probability states. We think this might explain why your species developed these abilities naturally." Sarah exchanged an amused glance with Xerxes. The Confederation scientists' enthusiasm for discovery had proven even more powerful than their former military discipline. Every day brought new breakthroughs as they combined their own vast knowledge base with humanity's understanding of quantum reality. "Speaking of development," Xerxes said more seriously, "the educational programs have reached the outer colonies. The response has been overwhelming. Entire sectors are reorganizing around research and learning. Military outposts are being converted into universities. Even the most hardline conquest advocates are finding it hard to argue with results they can see rippling across probability itself." Sarah nodded, remembering her own civilization's similar transformation centuries ago. "It's always fascinating to watch a society discover that understanding the universe is far more rewarding than trying to control it." In the space around them, a Confederation research vessel successfully achieved its first controlled quantum state shift, its hull briefly dissolving into pure energy before reforming. The crew's celebrations echoed across all quantum frequencies, their joy unbound by conventional space-time. "You know," Xerxes mused, watching the celebration, "when I arrived here with that invasion fleet, I thought I understood power. Weapons, ships, military might. It all seemed so clear. But true power is knowledge shared freely." Sarah completed the thought. "Wisdom passed on willingly. Understanding gained through cooperation rather than conquest." A alert chimed softly, drawing their attention to a new arrival. A ship from another civilization, drawn by reports of the remarkable transformation taking place in Earth's orbit, had just entered the solar system. Their initial scan suggested they too had come to study rather than conquer, though Sarah suspected they, like the Confederation before them, had no idea just how profound their learning experience would be. "Shall we welcome our new visitors?" Xerxes asked, already shifting into his new role as a mentor rather than a diplomat. "Of course," Sarah replied with a warm smile. "Though perhaps we should start them with basic quantum mechanics this time. We wouldn't want to overwhelm them on their first day." As they prepared to greet the newcomers, Sarah reflected on how far they'd all come. The Confederation's attempted invasion had led not to destruction but to renaissance, not to conquest but to collaboration. Their society was transforming from one built on military might to one founded on the pursuit of knowledge and understanding. The stars themselves seemed brighter now, as if responding to the waves of discovery emanating from Earth's orbit. Humanity had faced a potential enemy and turned them into eager students, and in doing so, had helped spark a transformation that would ripple across the galaxy for generations to come. As Sarah watched another group of former warships successfully achieve quantum synchronization, their crews cheering across probability itself, she knew that this was just the beginning. The universe was vast, full of civilizations waiting to learn and grow. And humanity, with their new allies at their side, would be there to guide them, not through force, but through understanding, not through conquest, but through knowledge freely shared. After all, she mused as space-time rippled with the joy of discovery around her. The greatest victories were never won through force of arms, but through the transformation of minds and the awakening of hearts to new possibilities.